Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about the power of belief. You know, belief is the law of the mind. And if you believe the way God has structured the law, that if you believe it and feel it, then it will happen in your life. Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life to the full, but we've got to do our part. God has set the laws up, but we have got to do our part. You know, I remember in my own life that something pretty powerful that came across as something really powerful for me was I was the preacher of a church in London. And London is a huge city, and 4 million people came into the downtown area, 1 square mile in London. And they came from all the outskirts of London, travelled into Liverpool Street, which is a huge station in London, and they would go to their work. And I went down to downtown London, and I went during the lunchtime and went into some of these churches. I'd heard about this and saw about 600 men sitting at a church service with their lunch boxes, listening to the sermons being preached. And I thought, wow, if they can do that, we can do that. And so then what we did, I put it out to God and I said, I know we can do this. And I believed it with all of my heart. As I started to put that into motion, it was amazing what started to happen is we were a controversial church because we were very focused and very public about our faith and what we did. And the Church of England and other churches didn't like us and stopped us being able to use churches. But God opened to the door to this Temple Crusades Church, which is in Fleet Street, which is the legal area in London. And we were able to get that church because of some lawyer friends. The only people that could stop us from using that was the Queen herself, which she was not going to do that. So we were able to use the Temple Crusades Church right in the heart of the legal area of London. And it was amazing. This is where the Crusades, before they took off to the Middle East, they would worship there and then take off. And so you have all these effigies of these heroes in England's mind in that day. And so we started off with 3 people, myself and 2, and started preaching and talking there, a meeting there. And with a short period of time, we were up to 50 in size of people that are coming from that. We converted lawyers, solicitors, barristers. It was amazing what started to happen. Then we opened up, as a result of that, a Bible study in the stock exchange, London Stock Exchange. And it was just amazing to see what happened as a result of that. We converted bankers, and I ended up out of this, what flourished out of this was a lot of these professional people played rugby, which was a really, it was a sport where all highly educated people played, and we ended up creating a rugby team in London, in the centre of London. I ended up taking 25 guys down to South Africa and Australia playing rugby, and all part of this desire to have a church service in downtown and help a lot of these professional people become Christians. That was because of belief. The law of the mind and the heart is belief. You know, the laws that God has set up, the natural laws, the unseen laws that are set up, we use them today. If we honor them, amazing things can happen, like buoyancy. If you get a brick and drop it in the water, it sinks. But if you understand buoyancy that comes out this way, you can put large amounts of weight on water and it will be able to float along. Like they have the huge barges that bring over these huge amounts of weight from different countries, cars, and the weight on these things is huge. But because of buoyancy, and you honor that, they stay afloat. We can fly aeroplanes because of understanding the physics of doing that. And so These laws were all around. But until we started honoring, respecting them, we didn't know how to use them or work with them. But when we do, the amazing things can happen. Like the Wright brothers figured out how to fly an aeroplane. Unbelievable. And yet, God says the law of the mind is belief. In the story I told several weeks ago where Thomas didn't believe Jesus was raised from the dead until he touched his hands and put his hand in his side of Jesus. Jesus walked into a room and said, Thomas, touch my hands and put your hand in my side. And then Thomas said, I believe. Then Jesus said something that was pretty profound. He said, blessed are you because you see me and believed. But blessed are those who don't see me and believe. That's us. And blessed means you've invoked a blessing from God. You've invoked something that God will help you in your life, endow you with the belief and the sense you can do amazing things with your life. Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life to the full. You will do even greater things than me. Well, what did Jesus do? Jesus taught hundreds of people, raised the dead, walked on water. Jesus did unbelievable things. And yet Jesus says we can do greater things than him. The challenge is, do we believe? And belief and fear come from the same place, your imagination. And so it is so easy for us to doubt things. And so because of our experience and how we've trained ourselves, and so it invokes something in our imagination really quickly for us to doubt and not believe and then deaden the heart. But Jesus says, just believe. And when you start believing and seeing the miracles or the things that God does, it invokes your heart. It brings in these feelings. Oh, this does happen. If I work with God, if I pray with God, things will happen. It's just up to you and your imagination. Look what? This is something I want to see in John chapter 5 with Jesus. Jesus was talking to the Pharisees and the apostles there, and he goes on and says they were questioning him, whether he's from God or not. And then Jesus says in verse 19 of John chapter 5, he says, Jesus gave them this answer. I tell you the truth. Jesus didn't lie. The Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, to your amazement, he will show him even greater things than these. For just as the Father raised the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives them life to whom he is pleased to give it to. Moreover, the Father judged no one, but he entrusted all judgment to his Son. Jesus said, I do amazing things. I raise the dead. I do all this. But why do I do it? Because I see my Father doing it. Well, where did Jesus see that? He saw that in his mind, and he believed, and God opened his mind. And Jesus said, I do it because I see the Father doing it. That is what Jesus saw. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 that we have the mind of Christ. So if that's what Jesus saw, when we put our mind and our heart into understanding God and belief, it opens our mind to see what Jesus saw. In our imagination, we can start to see amazing things. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, it says, God lifted the veil, and our minds now, if we contemplate on the Lord, we will see, which is meditation. You just meditate and understand the glory of God, and God starts to download things to your mind. But you've got to believe that this will happen. You know, we all learn from watching people. I remember in the late 70s, this movie came out, Saturday Night Fever, and John Travolta was this guy, played this guy from New York, was in a paint store just selling paint, but at night, on a Saturday night, he'd put on a white suit, black shirt, and then he would go down to the discotheque, and he was amazing, and everybody crowded round to watch him. Well, to all of us who were teenagers at the time, it opened up our minds about, I want to be a John Travolta, and I was one of them. Oh, Lord. And I got myself an off-white color suit and a black shirt, and I would watch the movie and watch his steps, and then would go to dance classes just so that I could watch and understand. And then the more you watched, the more you could understand it. And after a while, these little shuffles that you could do with your feet, after you couldn't get it at first, but if you kept working at it, after a while you feel it, and then you get it, and it's like, oh, I've got this. Why did I get it? Because I observed John Travolta and his moves so that I could pick them up to myself. Jesus says, if you have faith and you believe, imitate Jesus, try and understand the mind of Jesus, and you will see the things that God can do in your life. You know, we all look at people like Steve Jobs, who was amazing with Apple computers, but he to get what he wanted, he paid a price. He sold his car, he sold everything, gave up college, did everything so that he could make it work. He paid a price to get what he wants. One of the hardest things to do in life is to believe and work at that. Because every other thinking, everything else in life where you don't really have to think and you just respond to circumstances, it doesn't take much of an effort. But to build a life of faith, to build a life where you actually, in your personal life, not in your church life, but in your personal life, to be able to build that sense of belief and faith takes work. But Jesus says, if you do that, you'll do even greater things than me. And we know it. You have to focus. It's intentional what you need to do. And Jesus would tell the disciples, are you still so dull? Can you not see what I do? And it wasn't until he was resurrected that they got it. That tells us we can do amazing things. Einstein figured out the theory of reality by he worked in a post office, and he just stood outside. He had a window that he could look out, and he studied people going up and down this building. And then he realized, if someone dropped from that building, what speed would they going? Is that different from what normality is? And then that's where he figured out some of his science, because he contemplated these things. And what I feel like a lot of we do is just do a lot, but don't spend enough time contemplating the glory of God and teaching our mind to obey the law of the mind, which is belief, to dream great dreams. You know, it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, listen to this. Or not actually 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and in verse... Jesus is talking about the Spirit. And sometimes people look at this verse and think it's talking about heaven, but it's not. Because the question is, says, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. He's basically saying the world and their wisdom is not what God is looking for. No, we speak of God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden and that God has destined for our glory before time began. So God predestined wisdom for us on this earth. None of the rulers of this age understood it. For if they had, they would have not crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who loved him. But God has revealed it to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. And then it goes on to talk about the Spirit knows God and understands God, and then he imparts that Spirit to us and gives us the mind of Christ. You know, when you understand, it says, no eye has seen, no ears heard, no mind has understood the things that God has in store for you. That's not talking about heaven. He's talking about wisdom on this earth and insight into this on this earth that the pagans and the rulers of this age don't understand. But those who trust in God and desire that wisdom and that understanding, God will give them, and they will start to see things that no eye has seen, no mind has conceived. Well, what in your life do you want to believe? What in your life do you want to conceive? What is it that you want brought to you? There's a lot of things about the law of attraction, and it's this: if you have the positive mindset, you will draw things to you. I believe in all that stuff. And I believe God has set it up for us that we are a magnet to him, but we have to do our part, which is believe that what God has in store for us is amazing. If you're in your job and you're a teacher, you can be one of the most influential teachers. If you're in the financial world and you want to be an amazing person in the financial world and be able to have an influence, you can do that. If you want to be in politics, which is really a dirty game, you can do that with God. He will open up doors. If you believe. You've got to pay a price like Steve Jobs. You've got to contemplate like Einstein. And then God will, with his predestined wisdom, give it to you, everything you want. In fact, here's another great passage, and I'll close on this. Mark chapter 11, in verse 22, Jesus saw a tree that was not bearing fruit. And so the day before he cursed it because it was not doing what it was supposed to do. In the morning, as they were going along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, look, the fig tree you've cursed has withered. Now look what Jesus says. Have faith in God. Jesus answered, I tell you the truth. If any one of you says to this mountain, go, throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believe that what he says will happen, it will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you've received it, and it will be yours. Now, Jesus is talking in hyperbole here, which is, you go to a mountain and tell it run. It's not going to do that. But the point that Jesus is saying, he's using the hyperbole to say, if you just believe, if you just train your mind to stay away from negativity, from the news, from gossip, from people who are slanderous, from people that just don't have any good, that are faithless, but you protect your mind. And all you plant in your minds are things of faith, of belief, of a dream that you've written down, that you put into your subconscious mind. And you plant it and it will grow like any other seed in a garden. If that is how serious you are, you will do things that will blow you away if you have that faith. That is what Jesus is saying. I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know what dream you have for your life. If you're living a life that's just mundane and living under the radar, you need to change that and understand God can do even greater things through you if you have that level of faith. In conclusion with this, I wanted to speak to a person I knew was going through a rough time. in that person's life. And I decided I want to get in contact with that person. And so I tried several times and we connected a little bit, but then they disappeared. And I just, in my mind and in my mind's eye, in my subconscious, start planting the thought, I will talk to them a week from now on Friday. They will answer the phone. And when I would go to bed at night, I would envisage a conversation, everything going really well and positive and supporting them in their life. And I thought maybe they're going through a difficult time and they don't want to talk to me, but I worked on that. And you know what happened? On Friday, in the afternoon, that phone call came through. Now you may say, Chris, that's just coincidence. It may be. I don't believe so. I believe, because I believe that, I believe God's Holy Spirit went out and provoked them, dropped thoughts into them, and worked with me, and it came about. You know, at the end of your life, when you're with God, and God played a video of your life and says, this is you, and your faithlessness or your lack of courage, you led a kind of faithful, mediocre life. But God said, you know, if you made that decision at this point to believe in your life, look where it could have gone. If God played that video to you and then you could go back, what would you do? I know what you would do. You would dream big dreams. You would imagine big things. You would protect your mind from negative thoughts or faithless thoughts or confusing thoughts of the politics of our world and the division of our world and the divisiveness that goes on and people that are slanderous to you or negative, or life, and it has its troubles and difficulties. Maybe you're having challenges with finances, but if you believe God is the provider of money, not humanity, that God is it. And then you start to envisage and believe the things like I did with that church. And all of a sudden, what happened was amazing. My challenge is to you, are you living a mediocre life? Are you living under the radar instead of being a person of courage and understand that the power of belief can really change your life? I pray you have an amazing week with the power of belief.